in this age of the internet, there's so many separate touch points. So people might see you on Meta, and then they see you on Google, and then they see you on YouTube, and that's where they convert, or vice versa. There's any bit of combination there. But we do know for a fact that people research and they use Google when they research or they use ChatGPT. So showing up in those locations is paramount to making sure that your advertising spend goes further when you are spending. So someone already knows about you from ChatGPT because when they see your meta ad, they're probably more likely to convert. Or someone who sees your meta ad then goes to ChatGPT and asks about the brand. If nothing shows up, they're less likely to convert. So that's sort of the way I put it. It's like organic is still a very crucial part of the crucial touch point in the funnel. It may not be a channel that can immediately directly draw a line to its ROI as it like it used to, but you have no idea what it's doing to improve your ROAS on these other channels. And or hopefully you do. Hopefully there's enough attribution in place that you can do that. But you need to consider that. And something we see at Finder is when we pull back our meta spend on campaigns because a campaign has ended, one of our rewards offers has ended. All of a sudden our direct traffic goes down. Why is that? So you have to you have to play all sides of the game now. It's no longer just specializing in one channel, it's specializing in the whole customer journey.
You are listening to Power Marketing with Kevin Lee. Kevin and his agency Didit have helped thousands of businesses win through superior marketing, as have his books, articles, speaking engagements, and the eMarketing Association Power Marketing podcasts. Here's Kevin.
Hi, I'm Kevin Lee with the eMarketing Association. I also run an agency, Didit, that got its start in SEO before Google was even founded, a previous generation of search engines, and been involved in SEO. And as a result of a bunch of pivots, Didit now is in pretty much every category of paid and earned media. So super excited to be chatting with Zak Ali, who runs the US operations and marketing for Finder, and has been in SEO for a while as well. So Zak, let's start with the transition from sort of SEO focused web visibility to sort of GEO as well, and whether or not you think marketers are sort of prepared for that transition. Do you feel like most of the folks you talk to sort of understand the fundamentals of the different algorithms that power sort of 10 blue links versus what powers chatbots?
So I definitely don't think the industry is broadly prepared. I think there is still a bit of coming to terms with the reality of what's happening. I can see a lot of clinging on to some of the old ways of thinking about organic visibility that are no longer relevant. And likewise, kind of disowning the parts that are still very much relevant, that need to be continuously fostered and kept sane. So it's been such a journey to go from even just 10 years ago, what Google used to be sort of the golden age of AI, or not AI, of SEO, where you could genuinely write good content, build your link profile, and get floods of free traffic to your business. It was a beautiful top of the funnel sort of channel, and it's all margin once you do have those rankings, right? So once people come in and margin in terms of acquisition of users, or even just if you're in the affiliate space, acquiring users, or acquiring customers. So it was a great time, but now the game has changed, and there is a bit of work to be done on communicating where organic search sits in the sort of business distribution makeup.
So I'd love your thoughts on something that I found has been somewhat useful in as senior managers from the CMO, and then even CFOs start to look at investing in web visibility. That I found that when it comes to getting them to allocate budget, one thing that's been really useful is helping them understand all the things they should probably be doing that they're not doing, that have a byproduct of GEO visibility, right?
Yeah.
So, for example, they may not be investing in YouTube content. And while YouTube content alone is not going to be magically, resulting in GEO visibility, the byproducts of that, the transcripts and the audio transcripts that can also maybe live as podcasts on iTunes and Spotify, and the social activation of all that content tends to correlate pretty well with GEO visibility. So I just find that when you look at relative content velocities for one brand versus their peers and the places the content sits, often that's a way of sort of making it seem like it's not just for GEO. Like this is probably stuff you should be doing anyway. Have you found that when you look for sort of budget for right sizing the marketing channels, that that's a useful construct as well?
So that what you're talking about is honestly like something I feel so passionate about, which is that you just have to do the right thing because it's right. And if you focus on the right input metrics, you focus on the user, the results will follow. Now, that is a thing that you communicate to your CEO very delicately, because if there's not a dollar sign attached to it, you're going to have to generate the buy-in somehow. And I don't think people who are sort of really grounded on that commercial mindedness are going to be like, no, like I need, yeah, I need to see the return on this investment. There has to be some sort of payback. But the what you're talking about of just being on every surface and if your customers or your readers they live on YouTube, then you should be on YouTube and you should be on social and you should be on newsletter. You should be wherever they are because you're supposed to be feeding your actual company's mission, which is to achieve whatever it is you're trying to achieve. It's not to game algorithms or to work systems so that you can sort of jockey for position in search. It's really just to deliver. And when I tell this to people, I always talk about Apple. Do you think Apple's SEO person is ever afraid they won't show up for best computers or best phones or what? They know what their product is, and they're so heavy on that it would embarrass Google for Apple to not show up in those searches. So that's your job is to show up, is to make it embarrassing for Google to not rank you because your customers are just seeking you out. Yeah.
So yeah, that construct makes one think about web visibility as a meritocracy, right? And I guess the black hat SEO community was always like, I don't care if I deserve to be there or not, I want to be there, right?
Right.
And I guess you could make a pretty strong argument that many of the LLM algorithms, whether it's Gemini for Google or Claude or ChatGPT, really are an attempt to make it a meritocracy, right? Like, including digesting bad reviews and bad Reddit content and bad community content and maybe advising against the brand.
Right.
So, that tends to fall more, I think, in corporate communications, right? They're the ones managing reputation. They're the ones investing in the upper funnel and, having a good reputation out there.
Right.
So this puts maybe PR agencies in a unique position to capitalize on that. Do you feel like the PR agencies have woken up to that yet?
1000%. I mean, I think I'd said this to someone is there are two types of SEOs. There are technical SEOs and SEOs who don't realize their job is PR. And there's no really in between anymore. It's really about managing reputation and showing up. But the folks who do all the schema markup and all that, like I still think they're secure in that specialization because that stuff is still important. But ultimately, it is going to come down to how well can you get your company's name out there, your mission out there. When you type in, what does Acme organization do, but what ChatGPT or the AIO spits out, that's your job is to manage that and to make sure that that's saying the right things. Yeah, you're spot on. PR is the next wave of marketing. Yeah.
So one of the things that lives at the fringe of PR, because it looks and feels sometimes like editorial content, but it's not, is sort of the branded content editorial and influencer marketing, right?
Mhm.
Where you're paying the influencer to co-create content with you or create content for you. And for now, that content seems to get ingested by the LLMs and weighted it similarly to old school editorial content. And so when you're advising your internal teams or other folks that you just know in the industry, sort of how do you recommend that they view that opportunity and take advantage of that?
I think that it's a good time to make sure that you are solidifying your trust because that it only works if the trust element is there.
Yeah.
Like an influencer getting paid for something doesn't mean it's inherently untrustworthy. But if it's totally unrelated to their brand or whatever it is they're known for, it can start to feel, like they lose their weight, they lose their credibility in their voice.
Hmm.
But that is 100% why we see so much of the wave we see of people adding Reddit to the end of their searches. People want actual humans telling, like, not faceless brands or author bios, but actual people telling them their experiences and what to get and why they like it because you're not really risking anything as an author where people just scroll right past your byline to read a formatted SEO article, which by the way, before AI, everyone calls the AI content slop, and to a degree I agree. But before AI, we were all doing everything was formatted the same. There was really no big differentiator there. Some people went the extra mile, and there was like a mattress testing company that business whatever would like have heat sensors and all that stuff. They went really hard and like the wire cutter in the early days. But for the rest of us, we're all sort of it's the same structure. What is a credit card and how does a credit card work? And it was very commoditized already. But so people saw that and they were saying, I want real connection. So I want a brand that I trust or has credibility to give me that recommendation or a person to give me that recommendation. And I think that's why we see branded content exploding and why we see influencer marketing exploding is because it's a real human attached to to the other end of the recommendation.
So you've spent time in industries that are somewhat regulated or heavily regulated in the United States and maybe overseas as well. And so, do you feel like in those like pharmaceutical and finance and other regulated industries that they need to attack it from a different vector because of the fact that they're so regulated?
Yeah, definitely. So the YMYL categories are always going to be, which is your money or life, is they're always going to be under heavier scrutiny because there's liability there if you give bad information or false information. Someone couldn't pay us to tell you to purchase a mortgage or whatever from a certain company because it would encroach on editorial independence. And there's new laws that are cropping up all the time that reviews have to be unbiased and objective and all of that. So there's definitely more limitations, more guardrails on those industries. And that also puts the barrier of trust even higher. So we have to make sure that we aren't failing our fact checks and we're always, the information is credible, it's relevant. We're not steering too hard into one direction or the other. We're just laying out the facts. And always having our disclaimers out, investing content specifically, you also have to make sure that you're not saying like buy Apple stock, right? It's like this is not investment advice and all of that. But it is yeah, there's definitely a higher bar there. It's not like the, astrology sites that can say whatever they want. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's a category that has almost zero regulatory framework,
Right.
fortune telling and astrology. Uh, what else should marketers be thinking through as they think about sort of this budget of human capital allocation and budget of paid capital allocation, right? You had mentioned earlier that, getting the CEO bought in on different things is sometimes challenging. And,
Mhm.
obviously some CEOs have a strong preference for lower funnel. And
Right.
then, Apple's management has always been like, be such a luxury brand that, you get made fun of if you're not using us, right?
Right.
So, but to tune that conversation to sort of senior management, like how should people be thinking through web visibility as it relates to resonating with senior management?
So I think the phrase that tends to penetrate a bit more is assisted conversions. There's in this age of the internet, there's so many separate touch points. So people might see you on Meta, and then they see you on Google, and then they see you on YouTube, and that's where they convert, or vice versa. There's any bit of combination there. But we do know for a fact that people research and they use Google when they research or they use ChatGPT. So showing up in those locations is paramount to making sure that your advertising spend goes further when you are spending. So someone already knows about you from ChatGPT because when they see your meta ad, they're probably more likely to convert. Or someone who sees your meta ad then goes to ChatGPT and asks about the brand. If nothing shows up, they're less likely to convert. So that's sort of the way I put it. It's like organic is still a very crucial part of the crucial touch point in the funnel. It may not be a channel that can immediately directly draw a line to its ROI as it like it used to, but you have no idea. what it's doing to improve your ROAS on these other channels. And or hopefully you do. Hopefully there's enough attribution in place that you can do that. But you need to consider that. And something we see at Finder is when we pull back our meta spend on campaigns because a campaign has ended, one of our rewards offers has ended. All of a sudden our direct traffic goes down. Why is that? So you have to you have to play all sides of the game now. It's no longer just specializing in one channel, it's specializing in the whole customer journey.
Yeah, it's been fascinating. Obviously, Didit's been in paid search since the very beginning as well, but we've noticed dramatic correlation between positive brand sentiment and brand awareness and quality score, right,
Yeah.
on generics. And so having that advantage essentially gives you a brand discount in the paid media. And that's true not just in quality score in search, but responsiveness to social ads and even display and CTV. So, I think the word in media investment or marketing investment really is sort of key there because it does force you to think about it across up and down the funnel, right? For sure.
There's that famous graphic out there of how at the beginning it's really like the spend is so much higher than the return on organic, but the spend stays constant and the return continues to go up in organic. So you do have to do that initial upfront investment, but then once you're there and you're sort of maintaining it, the investment shrinks significantly, and then it's all assisting the margin of your other channels.
Yeah, we've had situations where, due to private equity firms rolling things up or other M&A activity, where you end up consolidating two, three, up to five brands, domains together, right? And so, have you ever had to have walk through the implications of sort of either a multiple of brands all being eliminated and then a completely new brand being created, or picking which brand should be the lead on a go forward basis?
So because we are a financial comparison site, when we run our campaigns, we are always having to sort of jostle which brands surface in what order, at least on our page. And there's definitely work that needs to be done there because you're not only considering your own reputation, but the reputation of the people you're working with. And so I don't know if I've had the one-to-one experience that you're talking about, but in a way, we've had it on that level, yeah.
Yeah, I think whenever I see companies do something mild, like just rebrand a logo, right? And
Mhm.
sometimes they're not dramatic, like, Burger King. It's like, okay, it's paying homage to the old logo when the new one comes out.
Right.
And sometimes it's like a complete renaming of the company. I
Yeah.
always wonder whether or not the CMOs have fully thought through all the implications of that from a, loss of that brand discount across all paid media that they're buying, and of course all the SEO implications of, okay, we're just gonna, combine three sites together, 301 everything back to a single site, etc.
Yeah. I think, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think one of the best examples of that is HBO rebranding to Max, then rebranding back to HBO Max, or, it was a hilarious fiasco. They arrived
Yeah.
on the right conclusion, it sounds like, but ask any marketer in the room, and they would be like, maybe we shouldn't seed our brand equity that we've spent 50 or whatever years building up. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know whether this is, something you've dealt with at Finder or in other roles that you've had, but as far as humanity sort of rising to the surface as important content
Mhm.
creation, that has implications from an events basis as well, right? In the fact that you have to remember to capture the event content and repurpose it from a social media perspective, repurpose it from a blog or publication or content syndication perspective. Do you feel like have you ever had to deal with the ramifications of sort of event content and visibility?
Oh, I think definitely. I mean, the content waterfall is like always ingrained in me that like if we're gonna have an event or something, it should turn into shorts and it should turn into reels. It should turn to a blog post. You repurpose that piece of media across all of your channels as much as you can. And I think that's sort of where content is moving towards now is like if we are going to move into a world where marketers try to attack multiple surfaces at once, it should start with one idea that can then spread to everything, instead of trying to do a whole separate YouTube content plan and a whole separate blog content plan. It needs to all sort of be cohesive and flow into each other.
So final question really has to do with sort of philosophical perspective on marketers having maybe those who've been around for a long time have a command and control mentality around
Yeah.
content and around messaging. And so, they're not comfortable with influencers creating content, and they're also not comfortable with employees engaging in social and creating
Yeah.
content. And I feel like I see so many older brands with older management that won't allow their employees to engage, for example, in Reddit, right? Or won't allow them to talk about the brand on their socials. And to me, just seems like a huge missed opportunity.
Yes.
What advice would you give to the sort of perhaps VP of marketing who's trying to sell up into the organization? Like, listen, we've got 38,000 employees, right? And they're not allowed to talk about us on social or in Reddit and that kind of thing. Unlocking that value, how would you recommend that they sort of pitch that up into the C-suite?
I'd ask them how important it is for people to trust your brand. Because your employees are your best stewards, they're your best brand ambassadors. The people who work there and are spreading the good word about your organization, are evangelizing themselves, is going to be some of the most powerful guerrilla marketing that exists. Um, I think she was chief growth officer, or is something different now. She's moved back to an individual contributor role, but there was someone called Elena Verna who worked at Lovable, who I followed on LinkedIn, and she was, not the CEO, not the founder, but constantly just speaking about the product and the growth. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm building a parasocial relationship with this person because one, I'm following their posts, I'm seeing her talk about the product, and now maybe I want to try Lovable. And that's just one instance of many I see of people building real customer relationships with folks who work at the organization who are not the founder and they're not, even an influencer, but someone who just genuinely works there. And I think nothing speaks as highly as that. There's Boris Cherny at Anthropic who created Claude Code, who's constantly talking about his product and what he does and how he uses it and interacting on Twitter. Building trust, that matters so much, to have put faces to faceless organizations.
Yeah, people don't realize how big Lovable was also into sort of influencer marketing as well, right? And
Yeah.
and taking customers and converting them into influencers, micro influencers, and having them showcase what they had built, right? As a way to get the message out. So I think some old school marketers could learn a lot from this new generation of companies who really have embraced that on employee engagement and customer engagement.
Oh, totally. Yeah, again, I think like we were saying earlier, PR, that's part of PR. I think that is the new form of marketing that I think is going to explode in 2026 and beyond.
So who should own that, right? Corporate structures often have a CMO and a corporate communications being segmented off. Sometimes the corporate communications reports into the CMO. Sometimes the CMO runs corporate communication themselves. Do you feel like it requires a restructuring of many corporate org charts in order to create holistic plans around this?
I think so. I think PR almost splits into internal and like crisis management function, and then there's the other that's more of a marketing function where it's about reputation and getting the right words out and teaching folks how to be media trained so that they can go on podcasts like yours and say what their company's doing and be able to message it appropriately. So I do think there is going to be a bit of a restructure. I think we're going to see that across many different departments in the advent of AI for what it's worth. I think product managers and designers and engineers are also blending into one sort of role. And so I do think that when people throw out the word like AI native, for example, it's thinking about the questions that we're talking about right now so that your organization runs in the most efficient way instead of trying to apply AI or automation to a legacy system that's no longer working. So sorry, that was veering off a bit from marketing, but to answer your original question, yeah, I do think there will be a bifurcation of that department. Yeah.
No, that's an excellent point, right? Because we don't know exactly what the future is going to look like as it relates to um, humans having and the access to AI as a a pair coder in the case of coding, or a pair designer in the case of design, or just an operational um, brain enhancer, right? Allowing you to do more. Obviously, I don't think anybody wants more slop,
No.
but it has added amazing efficiency gains that, I haven't seen a big reduction in headcount. I've just seen everybody rejoicing of the fact that their velocity goes up, right, up and
Yes.
down the chain. So I do think that that is relevant to marketing because it's manifesting itself in a bunch of ways there.
Yeah, totally. And it gets the senior marketers back on the ground so that they can be more player coach instead of just coach. And those are the folks who have all of that tenure and that history. It allows them to operate again. Allows them to be the sort of orchestrator of the workflow rather than, they don't have to do it necessarily, but they have all of that context and they can manage their agents like employees. It's really crazy how quickly some companies are totally transforming their organization so that people who need to be closest to the work can be so again. Um, and like you said, there's also an adversarial component where you have to like challenge your own ideas, and that's the way to sort of avoid slop or avoid wrong thinking. Um, and I have an agent, for example, that's whole job is to sort of poo-poo my ideas, to poke holes in them and whatever, so that you can sort of find that middle ground that allows you to be more efficient and to avoid the slop and yeah, do the marketing that actually performs. Yeah.
So, on a philosophical basis, obviously, we all learned in the trenches, when we were fresh out of school, and um, now the next generation is learning in an AI assisted way. Of course, some of them may have a love-hate relationship with AI.
Yeah.
Um, just different generations have different points of view on that. But do you feel like that puts at risk the old way of learning, right? Because we couldn't rely on the same kind of tools when we were coming up, doing organic or doing paid or whatever we were working on.
Yeah. I do think that does put at risk the old way of learning in some regard. But like, if you were around when the calculator was invented, you probably, were the people who were like made their careers on abacuses, were they freaking out, and just like, or like doing hand math. We're in another example of that. Of course, this applies to every industry all at once instead of just like one, it's not just calculations. But you will find that the folks who use AI to replace their ability to think or think critically aren't going to make it very far. It puts millennials and Gen X and boomers, mostly Gen X and millennials, I'd say, in a really unique position in which they still had to learn things the hard way, but now they have this thing that can make their life a lot easier. So they're able to do the critical thinking and the sort of execution. And the younger generations who are growing up with AI making everything so easy, they're removing the friction from their life. I saw a tweet that said like, how did people write 5-page essays before AI? Like, and people are replying like, brother, I was doing that 3 hours before the class started. This wasn't, we had to really make a go of it. And so you do still need that level of friction. And I think you can still find it. One thing that uh, AI does is it expands your ability to make an impact. It doesn't if you just apply it to your current role, of course, it's going to feel like it's automating your job. But if AI allows you to do 5 other areas of impact at the same time as what used to just you do one, and you're filling more of your day with higher impact work, you're not going to feel like you're on easy street. And employers aren't going to feel like they need to reduce you. They're going to be like, well, if we had another person who could also do as much work as this person's doing, we could do even more. And so I think that's not always going to be the case, but I do think um, you can't remove friction from your life. And AI won't, it's not at a level currently where it can totally remove friction from your life, or you risk getting totally lapped by your competitors.
For sure. Well, thanks so much for joining me, Zach. A lot of stuff for people to chew on as it relates to visibility and business in general. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Kevin.
Kevin Lee's Power Marketing is available on all your favorite podcast networks. Kevin loves helping businesses excel at marketing. Having marketing challenges? Just like Santa in The Miracle on 34th Street, if Kevin can't help you, he'll know someone who can. Find him on LinkedIn, subscribe, or follow.